GitHub Copilot for Maui applications with Jon Peppers.
The Azure and DevOps podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using the latest in .NET, Azure, AI, and DevOps. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. The show is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a full-service software architecture and engineering firm. Find them at www.clearmeasure.com. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast and deliver quality and run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. My guest today on the show is Jon Peppers, and he's a principal software engineer on the .NET MAUI team at Microsoft. But before building developer tools, Jon was a Xamarin MVP and a lead developer behind so many cross-platform MAUI apps. He lists, a good number on his website, and he has a deep background in C# from WPF-based self-checkout systems to home automation software featured on Extreme Home Makeover edition, the TV show. Jon brings just an absolute wealth of experience in both app development and the frameworks that power them. And so I'm really excited to have him on the show. Jon, welcome. How are you, sir?
Hey, doing well. Yeah, it's been a while. Some of that stuff has been a long time ago, but
well, you've done a lot. I'd be there for a while listing everything off, but you've been at Microsoft for a while working on the developer tools for MAUI, and I really enjoyed. We'll include a link to the show notes. Really enjoyed your blog post on how GitHub Copilot was being used on the MAUI team. And it just, Copilot agent mode was released at the Build conference or around May. I know inside Microsoft, you probably have it longer than that. But I want to ask you about that because there's so much there. But before doing that, I always like to ask the guest, going back on time, just to get to know you, are there a few milestones in your career that maybe were instrumental in leading you to the type of work that you're doing today?
Yeah, out of college, I got my first job working on C#, and we were building self-checkout software you may have mentioned in the intro. And I remember at the beginning, it was WinForms, and then we needed to do some things that, we needed animations, and this new thing, WPF, had just come out, and I remember migrating the thing to WPF. But it's been a long way since then. Maybe a big moment is when the iPhone came out. That was maybe 2008-ish.
Yeah. And
the first thing we wanted to do, I was working for a smaller company, is we need some apps in this app store, And that's when I found ways to do that in C#. At the time, the product was called MonoTouch, and it was by Novell and a guy named Miguel de Icaza, his crew. So I've been using the product that long, and now I still work on it today in its current form.
Nice. Yeah, it's had a good journey, but how amazing is it that we don't have to go to a completely different platform just to get an app on the various pocket computers, as I like to say.
Yeah. I mean, so at least you don't have to learn a new language. You do have to learn some new APIs, which is even less so today with MAUI. But back then, you'd have to learn UIKit or you'd have to learn Android. But at least you had C# and you could share a library between the platforms, right? So,
right.
But yeah, we've come a long way since back then.
Right. Well, let me just open the floor. You've written about this, but GitHub Copilot for MAUI apps. The holy grail, I would think, and I'm probably some listener on the show is wanting me to ask this question. Okay, can I ask Copilot to look at my website and then just create all those screens in MAUI and have it do it? Now, we all know the answer is probably no, but how much on the continuum are we right now with Copilot agent mode?
I think so. You can use, the word Copilot is overloaded. There's probably two ways I use it. There's I'm either in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, and then there's a chat window. And then the other way is on GitHub, you can file an issue and then assign it to Copilot, and it will go off on a Linux GitHub Actions runner and do its work and open a pull request to complete the issue, right? So if you're doing something that you feel like you want to like interact with the AI and like really quickly tell it to fix things, like you probably don't want to do the issue route. The issue route is more about, oh, let's give it a chance. This is an easy problem. Maybe it can just solve it in one shot. And then maybe I have one comment and merge it, right? Like that's kind of the thought of using the issues. If you had a website and you wanted to turn it into a MAUI app, I would maybe start with, getting a project up and running first. And then I bet you could go maybe a screen at a time. If you said something like, look at this Razor file and output a MAUI file that does the same thing, I bet it could do a pretty decent job. Just don't have it do your whole project at once.
Yeah, it's too big.
Usually there's just a limit at how many words or tokens it can read at once, and so it's not going to be able to do the whole project yet. But maybe in a few years we'll get there.
There's a good segment of .NET developers out there who still to this day haven't actually ever shipped a MAUI application of any kind, however simple. And maybe they remember trying in the past, and there were some hurdles in the past, and they didn't, and then they just haven't tried as the improvements have gone. So, real quickly for them, with the current state of the release, what is the getting started experience right now? What do .NET developers have to have just to, even to do the, get a Hello World app into Google Play Store or iOS App Store?
Yeah, so getting it in the store is I wouldn't say it's hard. It's like a bureaucratic process of filling out forms.
Besides the approval process.
Yeah. But if you just wanted to try MAUI, you can get, probably the easiest way is to get Visual Studio, and there's a MAUI workload in there. And then that'll come with a project template. And then to start out, I would recommend just running it on Windows if you're on Windows, right? I think the only thing you have to do is enable developer mode, and then you just hit F5 and you should get something that runs, right? Now, when you go to mobile, maybe Android is maybe the next easiest if you're on Windows. It'll prompt you to create an Android emulator, which won't work great. It's not the best, but you can also plug in your phone. And if you have just a random Android device, those are probably the two ways to go. And in theory, once you have that first project, you should be able to just change the Visual Studio's play button to Android and then hit play and get something to go, right? So I would start with those moments, and when you're ready for iOS or you have a Mac or you're on Mac, the story is more like you have to install everything yourself on Mac. Like you have to go get VS Code, go get Xcode. And once those things are there, you'll have to run .NET workload install MAUI to install the MAUI workload. And then from there, you could do the same thing, but just from the VS Code perspective, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And if you're targeting both of them, is it still the case where you need to have some type of Mac OS device on your local network next to your Windows computer so that there can be that compilation or signing process?
Yeah, you can. We do have a feature where you can develop on Windows and it'll like run SSH and talk to your Mac and deploy. But if you're okay to use a Mac, you can also just be on the Mac and do the same thing. And that's what I prefer to do, just because I'm okay to use a Mac. I somehow learned the switch between the Windows and Command key. Like there's some muscle memory to learn for that, but yeah.
Okay. And a lot of developers remember the announcement that Visual Studio for Mac was being deprecated, and the announcement was, okay, use JetBrains Writer instead. What's the most supported path or common? Is it Writer? Is it VS Code now for if you're on Mac OS directly?
Yeah. Well, I'm partial to VS Code even on Windows. I use it a lot. It's great at opening a folder with just a very random collection of files, right? Like any language, that's what VS Code is good at doing. It doesn't have the features like full Visual Studio has like profilers and like all of these things that just aren't there. But there is a .NET MAUI Visual Studio Code extension. Mm-hmm. And if you have that, you can select the device you want to run on and hit the play button or F5 and deploy to it. So that's what I would recommend to start. I mean, Visual Studio Code is pretty good. I mean, it's a pretty big editor. Right? A lot of people use it, especially people who are outside of .NET use it a lot. So,
isn't it outside of .NET people? Isn't it the most popular text editor?
Be. Yeah. People who are just writing Python or you name it, right? Like JavaScript, they're using Visual Studio Code. So.
Sure. So you work on the developer tools for MAUI, but on a day-to-day basis, what does your GitHub Copilot usage look like now? What has become habit?
Yeah. Well, so even really basic things like I used to search like Google or do a web search and ask a question like, if I'm working in PowerShell and I'm not super familiar with PowerShell, I'd say, how do you write an if statement in PowerShell, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would rather just ask Copilot that in ask mode, and then it would probably give me a code snippet that I could even like copy, paste it, and just put it in the file. Like it does have a nice button that says insert here,
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very basic thing, right? Like that's just how do I do this? And it gives you the answer quicker than Google because you would scroll through like a half a page of ad links.
Yeah.
And you click an article and it would have ads, so that part's good. I also use it. So here's an advanced example maybe is I'm looking at a crash, and if I'm working in the .NET Android repo, we have C++ code, Java code, and C# to like make the product work.
Mm-hmm.
So you can paste. Sometimes I'll paste it a crash, like a stack trace, like exception to string or whatever I have, mm-hmm. and say, hey, go put a log in our code, go through our code base and put a log where this stack trace is, so I can figure out what's wrong, and then build our product, run it, and I quickly could figure out what's wrong. And it can handle switching between languages and logging differently in the languages. And I mean, that's just a very useful debugging tool. And, in that case, I was fixing something where I didn't have access to a debugger at all. And so it was kind of like old school console write line debugging is what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. The crashes that result from the overuse of memory and memory leaks where it gets to a point where and then it just crashes. Would it not be in a consistent stack flow? Is it useful there too? Because it's not a consistent stack. What does that look like?
It can be. So, this is something that I would like to figure out how to get it to work better. But the files that you can give Copilot usually need to be text-based. Like you can't put a binary file like a GC dump, a memory snapshot in .NET. But what we could have is an MCP server, model context protocol, that could open that file and give it to the LLM. And I kind of was playing around with that idea, and I got something to work where I gave it a thing that had a leak in it, and I asked it, where's the leak? To find out, can it really find leaks? Because if that's true, then we need to put this in the hands of our developers to help them find memory leaks. And it did a decent job, and it even could find the line of code in the sample app that I had that had the leak. So, I think, I don't work on Copilot, but I think there is something there that we need to work in Visual Studio or VS Code 1.
So when it found the leak, what exactly did you give Copilot?
Yeah, I said, open this GC dump file, and I gave it the path to it.
Okay.
And then I had like this little test MCP server I had written to open it and turn it into text, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and then it
yourself
could say, yeah. At some point I could release that MCP server. It probably needs a little polish, but I was at the point where I was trying to find out if AI could even solve this problem, and it seems like it can.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so for developers, there's probably a developer out there listening right now wrestling with it. So they just take the dump, convert it themselves to a text format, and then put the text format in there.
Now, Visual Studio, you can open the dump, and there is a new Copilot menu in there. So you could also go that way. I think they added that feature pretty recently, so I would try that first if you're looking to do something like this today. Just so you don't have to.
Are those dumps from the emulators, or are those dumps from the actual devices, or both?
No, so you can. There's a command .NET-GC dump, and you can connect it to your Android app or iOS app or Windows app, and you'll get this format that is like, it shows every .NET object and how much memory it's using, and you can even follow the links between the objects to find out which object is holding who, basically. Yeah. So it's not like even a native Android format. It's a .NET format. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I think that we've already helped some people out with listening to the podcast, because it's a constant frustration at the memory profiling tools for the app running on the Android itself and running on iOS itself, and not just being, a really easy situation. So I think you just helped somebody out.
Yeah. And I'm trying to currently in my day job, trying to improve those tools to make it easier to get dumps and traces, and hopefully, when .NET 10 releases, some of that will be out, and I want to write a nice documentation page on it. So be on the lookout in the next month or two.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, for those who are testing out .NET 10 preview, are any of those in the preview that they should look for?
Some of it, yeah. So that .NET GC dump tool is basically it's basically a NuGet package that you install. It's a .NET Global tool. So its release cycle is different, but I think they're going to release at maybe one of the upcoming .NET 10 releases some of the things I'm working on. So
nice. Now for the MAUI application developers themselves, to who are working on, let me add a new page, or they're working on a particular screen, what type of scenarios have you already seen GitHub Copilot just absolutely nail and be great at?
Well, let's talk about the issue assigning part of the. Of course, really, that's a different product than using the chat window. So it's called the Copilot coding agent, or they might call it SWE agent in some places. But so an example is, we've wanted to go clean up the code base quite a bit. There's files we can delete that are left over from Xamarin Android, but they're still in the repo. Yeah. And so an easy issue, this is how we got started using, is that we'd say, go delete these files and find out if they're used anywhere else and clean it all up, right? And then file an issue on GitHub and assign it to Copilot. And a job like that, it's actually very good. It went So not only did it delete the code I was looking for, but it saw that there were error codes in the code, and it went and deleted the error codes from our string localization files. And then it went and found our documentation and update. Like, it just found all these things that if I had done it, I don't know if I would have found them all, right?
Yeah.
Like, I probably would have just deleted the files and moved on, right? So tasks like that, it's pretty good at. Also things like, if you have a C# project that's been around a while and you want to make it enable nullable reference types,
That's a bear.
that can be a tedious thing. It can do a decent job at just doing that for you. Of course, I'd recommend asking to do one project at a time. The coding agent, what it'll do is it'll do several files and then like decide it's going to give up, and it'll send the changes it did. So, but you might have to assign it the issue multiple times to do an entire project.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay, so
or ask it to keep going. Things like that.
Yeah. Right. Well, how does that flow work? Because presumably you would want it to work on a feature branch and then submit a pull request. Am I right?
Yeah. So when you assign it, the first thing it'll do is it'll create a branch called Copilot/fix, and then it has a number, right? And then it'll open the pull request with no changes, and it starts like updating the description to say what its plan is, right, in English, right? And then it goes off and like really does the work, and it will push commits, and it might push one additional commit or might push several, depending on if it gets to a point where it thinks it has some changes to turn in. And then from there, when you review its code, you just comment to it. Like you leave it a code review like it was a person. And then it'll go and do the process again. It will look at your comments to try to do what you asked it and send more changes, right? And so then when you're ready, all your CI checks have run and it's green, you can approve and merge it, but that's all up to the human to do that, right? So it's really no different than if you had a person on your team, really, right? Usually they don't merge their own pull requests without some review, or So
the way it's set up, it assumes that every ticket assigned is going to be a pull request as opposed to a feature branch with maybe several small issues in series.
Yeah. GitHub, I think this is a thing they've kind of enforced from the beginning, but they imagine that you have one issue, that's one branch. So if you have some like complicated branching strategies, it may not be able to, like Copilot may not be able to do that yet, right? Like there's some people who might have a dev branch that they work on for a month and then they merge it to main. Like it might be tricky to make some things like that work.
Okay. And is it always going to branch off of master, or could you have it branch off of an arbitrary branch? Or maybe that's
I don't think they have that yet, because we want it to be able to do some things like that. And I'm pretty sure we've filed some issues to, like asking for features. And I think this is one we asked for, because the .NET MAUI repo, the main branch is actually .NET 9, because we want like any contributors to just use .NET 9, right? And if they do some work and send a change to us, they can just use .NET 9. And then we have a .NET 10 branch, right, that we would like Copilot to be able to work against. So what we end up doing a lot of times is when Copilot is done, just like you can rebase, where you can retarget a pull request to a different branch. So you could do that partway through, and that would probably also work for now.
Okay. Now, a normal software engineer, a lot of teams have the process where before the pull request is pushed, the engineer runs the private build script locally with as many fast tests as are in there, and make sure that no other tests are broken before they actually submit the pull request. Does this Copilot agent have the ability to run some type of build ahead of pull request?
Yeah, you have a couple options there. So there's a file called Copilot instructions.md, and you can put anything you want in there that you want Copilot to know. Like if you have like rules about what it needs to do or scripts it needs to run, you can put those in there and it will do its best to follow those instructions, right? Now, if your file is huge, it might get lost, right? So I've tried to keep them brief, but VS Code actually has a menu where you can generate the instructions file to start with for your repo. It'll go through your repo and create one for you.
Interesting.
And so most of the time, the agent does try to build a project and run tests. And especially if you've put in there how to do that, it should do it before opening a pull request. Now, sometimes if it's struggling and it can't figure something out, like sometimes it will say that everything built successfully or something, but it didn't actually, is what I found. And I know they're working on it. As new models come out, I anticipate problems like that getting better.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes in the future.
And with your own usage of it, which model, one or two, do you find yourself selecting most of the time right now?
So the coding agent, I don't think you can select it yet. I think it might be based on one of the Claude, some version of Claude. In VS Code, you can pick between several versions of GPT or Claude or Gemini. But I think the one I use, let me actually just open it. I think it's Claude 4.
That's the latest that
right.
I see in the drop-down with the Claude series.
Yeah, Claude Sonnet 4. But today, GPT-5 came out, so I'm interested to see when we get GPT-5 in that menu, it's going to be like, So I think that's why they made that menu, is that they anticipate there being a better one every week or two. And so my answer today might be different when the new one comes out.
For sure. And while we're on Copilot, I mean, it seems like other teams at Microsoft and so many people are talking about agent this and agent that, even embedding agents in different pieces of software. And this is different from GitHub Copilot agent being the one to generate the code. But have you seen those patterns, or do you know what's possible for actually having C# classes in a MAUI application that internally are acting like an agent and executing a prompt somehow and using a language model on device?
Yeah. So probably the library to look into if you want to do that in C# is called semantic kernel. And that's what, if I was going to make Copilot in VS Code where you chat with it and it goes off and does stuff, and I would use semantic model to build that kind of interaction, where what it gives you is it gives you the way to change what model you're using, right? So they have a drop down that picks between all these models, right? So semantic kernel has that, but it has the ability to run tools, or they might call them functions.
Kernel functions, yeah.
Yeah. So if you say, hey, read this file on my computer, the LLM can't go off and do that. So it'll call a function that is like deterministic regular code that you can write in C#, and it could go read the file and return the text of the file, for example. And so that you would, if you're building a chat app, like that's going to be an LLM, that's I would say use, semantic kernel. I'm trying to think, like, I imagine someone is writing software with some autonomous agent that goes off and runs tasks. But I mean, that's got to be coming in the future. And you could use semantic kernel to do that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but there's other frameworks. It's like AutoGen. Yeah. There's other frameworks that, like, you could look into. I think AutoGen is one where you can create these agents that talk to each other to work together to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And just like semantic kernel, you can pick which LLM you're using. It can be local, or it can be one based on an API key that you talk to in the cloud. Yeah.
Well, AI Foundry and Azure OpenAI have done a good job being able to deploy and run models, on the cloud and connect to them from any device that you know of. Are there scenarios where it's a good idea to try to use an LLM like literally on device on the device, iOS?
Yeah. I think if privacy is a big concern, like maybe if your product is something related to healthcare, like it feels like you'd want to do that. There's a couple options. Like I know Apple has APIs to do this, and so does Android. There is a new library that like just came out by Frank Krueger called Cross Intelligence. And I don't think he has Android support yet, but he has some of these features for .NET where you can, on iOS, use the local LLM that's available on the device. But there's also third-party things like Llama from Facebook. Like, you can run one of their models just on your desktop.
Yeah.
And I believe that also works on mobile. Like, you can just...
Llama specifically works on mobile? That would be awesome.
I think I think they have a C++ library. And and then there is also Llama Sharp.
Yep.
That kind of wraps the C# or the C++ library and the C#. So you could use that on mobile.
Okay.
In theory.
Yeah, I didn't find Llama specifically for mobile. Found something called Enchanted LLM. But all right.
Yeah, and this stuff is moving.
Yeah, it's moving fast.
Quick. Yeah. So I bet, I mean, I feel like if Apple has some on-device model on their newer devices, you might be better off just using it because your app won't be massive, right? Like if you try to put a LLM in your app, all of a sudden it's a gig,
Right. And it would be an open source model that's probably not as good at certain things as the one that Apple chose to embed in the device.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I know Apple, like, that model's only on the newer devices. So I think it's like iPhone only 16 and up, maybe.
The ones with Apple Intelligence?
Yeah. Those are the ones that have these APIs that you can use.
Nice. Well, as we close up here, that's a lot of great information about how you guys have been successful using GitHub Copilot and the different modes on the MAUI team. Is there anything else that MAUI developers should do next if their interest was piqued and they want to dive in further?
Yeah, for using Copilot in your IDEs, I would just say try that out. Like, on any project, you can just kind of get started and ask it to do something and see what happens. And you don't always have to chat with it. It has code completions. So a thing that I see is a lot of times if I'm fixing up a lot of repeated code, it'll just suggest exactly what I want and I hit tab, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just stuff like that is useful, even if you're not wanting to talk to an AI, right? Like a lot of people are like, no, I don't want to chat with some AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would try that out first. If you're interested in the coding agent, The way I learned about how to use it and how to, get good results from it is I just created a project like from nothing and said, hey, this app it's a cat app, and make it like a popular dating app where you swipe left or right on pictures of cats, right?
Cats.
And I just filed issues and it made the app for me, right? The whole time I'm filing issues.
Nice.
So it's called Cat Swipe. It's on my GitHub, but it created a MAUI app from scratch just by filing issues. And it really helped me. That was me dipping my toe to figure out like, how could we use this in our real day-to-day work? But I would start with something like that though, for sure. Yeah. And
Fantastic.
I think once you have Copilot, I don't know about the pricing, but you can use it both ways, right? Like they go towards your quota of requests from either inside your IDE or the coding agent. So,
yeah, very nice. Well, Jon, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing with us how you've taken advantage of GitHub Copilot in the MAUI space, both on the app, Cat Swipe, but also the developer tools work that you're using. Yeah. This is really fascinating. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
My pleasure. And until next time, dear listener, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure and DevOps podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Visit our sponsor, ClearMeasure, at www.clearmeasure.com. And on behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.